Okay, let me know when you're ready.
I've lost my name.
Right. We could help you by creating a new identity for you if you so wish. We've got the means. Just for Robert's view, at the back, and everyone else knows this program is this part of the meeting is streamed live. So we're now actually up and running. So if you do want to have a thrilling evening at home, sitting by your fireside, listening to the proceedings, you can do so live. But you can also access it afterwards because it's kept recorded. Right. So apologies for absence. As far as I'm aware, I have apologies from Councillors Squire, Ward, and Roberts. The last we heard from Councillor Ward, he was in the airport at Singapore, but he's probably close to Sydney by now, I would imagine. But he did send us an email from the airport at Singapore. Why someone would want to send this council an email when they were on their way to Australia, I don't know, but he obviously felt it was a good way of spending time. Probably avoid spending large sums of money in the airport shops, I expect. Declarations of interest. Members, if you have any interests you wish to declare, now is the appropriate time. If not, and you become aware of an interest during the course of the meeting, please make sure you catch my eye. If we move on to item 3, please, which is the minutes of the council meetings. Item A is to confirm the minutes of the meeting of Tavistock Town Council held on Tuesday the 12th of September, and the clerk is already putting them next to me, expecting me to sign them, and I'm not going to do that because you haven't approved them yet. It was a good try, Mr. Clark. Thank you. So, members, page 1, any errors or omissions? Page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and page 7. You all happy I sign them as an accurate record? I will do so later in the meeting. Under matters arising, which is 6b, I have 2 that I've identified. Minute 127C, little 2. I would ask the town clerk, please, for an update on that particular item. That's on page 3, members. It's a draft agreement would be prepared and passed to the Heritage Trust for comment.
It is in the process of being prepared, and since you raised it with me, I have also sent a further email just to check on progress in relation to that, sir.
Thank you. And I've also identified minute 128A that the request was made that before yearbooks were commissioned for 18-19, councillors be canvassed to ascertain the level of interest, and the clerk is going to give us an update on that, or he would have done if the assistant to the town clerk had responded to her telephone.
And I understand the assistant to the town clerk will be doing so before we enter into any arrangements for ordering.
But that hasn't been done yet.
Not as far as I'm aware.
Members, are there any other items arising from those minutes which are not covered by tonight's agenda that you wish to raise? No, in which case I intend to move on. Thank you. Item 4A, schedule of payments. You will note the note at the bottom which said members should have asked detailed questions before tonight. That doesn't stop people asking questions tonight if they wish to do so. Are there any questions, please, on the schedule of payments from any of the members? Councillor Ewings? No? Yes?
I telephoned the clerk with all my questions on the minutes and on the minutes. Thank you.
Would you like a gold star or a platinum one?
Platinum, I think.
Platinum, okay.
I think the town clerk might feel platinum because he kept saying, was there any more? And there was.
Item 4B then, please. Budget monitoring report. Any questions on that from the members? Gosh. Not sure I can stand the suspense. Somebody pass the Valium, please. Item 4C, the annual return external audit. No? Yes? Councillor Ewings?
We need to formally put forward, don't we, the statement from Grant Thornton. We just formally need to note it now, so I'm happy to propose it.
Thank you. Councillor Smith's happy to second it. So, members, are you all happy then that we note 4A, 4B and 4C and the Grant Thornton report. Yes? You all agreed? Thank you. If we move on then please to item 5, which is electoral and related matters, casual vacancy. The latest update on this is that we are expecting an advertisement to appear in this coming Thursday's Tavistock Times Gazette. Getting a sort of maybe look from back there, but as the paper's going to bed about now. But we're told by West Devon that the advert's been submitted to advertise the fact that there is a vacancy. As members will be aware, I hope, well at least I hope you're aware, in order to have an election, which is what we would need to be able to retain our general powers of competence, there needs to be 10 people who are electors in Tavistock North Ward who actually sign a document requesting an election and submit it to West Devon Borough Council. I understand that Councillor Williamson has very kindly offered to be the lead member in ensuring that we do get that request from 10 members. Is that correct, Councillor Williamson?
Indeed. Last time I raised a petition, we got an election that was contested.
Thank you very much for that. So that is what is the programme. I think it's fairly tight between the advertisement appearing and getting the signatures in. There's quite a tight timescale. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is, but
I think what I would say is, irrespective of the statutory timescale, because of the way in which arrangements fall with the completion of the register of electors and Christmas, in order for the election to be held at the end of November, we would need to have that returned to the Borough Council by Wednesday of next week. So although the time frame is actually longer than that, it becomes particularly problematic if it's not returned within that time frame, and it would probably actually then mean an election after Christmas, which would be unsatisfactory.
Thank you. Before you, well, now you've sat down, but if you'd like to get him in, as we have Councillor Hutton, who's new to this authority, would you mind just summarising briefly, and just so it reminds members why we want the general power of competence, why we can't simply go and co-opt? There is a good reason for it, and I think it's useful to remind ourselves.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, thank you. In general terms, before the general power of competence was introduced, the situation was that local authorities could only do what was explicitly allowed by statute. So if you wanted to buy a box of paperclips, you had to find a piece of legislation that said you could buy a box of paperclips. The general power of competence effectively allows a council to do whatever a member of the public can do, which is not otherwise unlawful. So it opens up the possibility for the council to undertake initiatives such as the Townscape Heritage Initiative, which is a third-party grant scheme, which otherwise it wouldn't actually have the power to do. And the general power of competence requires 2/3 of councillors to be returned at election and the council to have a qualified clerk. The reason this election is important is that we are within one of the threshold, which brings us back to having the general power of competence, which we technically lost when Councillor Gibbons stood down.
Thank you. Councillor Hutton.
Can I just...
I think it's because...
Can I just check this? Because I went to a budget meeting recently, and there was quite a debate over whether you lose the power of competency mid-term. In that they didn't know the true answer as to whether, if you were competent on the 4-yearly cycle, you actually retain that competency for the full 4 years. Now, do you or don't you?
Could we just ask a couple of people, Councillor Ewings and Hutton, to turn off their microphones, please? Thank you.
It is a moot point which, as far as I'm aware, has yet to be challenged. I take the view that you would retain it for the electoral year, so you confirm it at the annual meeting, so potentially you could argue that you have it for the electoral year. I think it's much harder to argue that you have it for the electoral cycle. There is a general consensus that for projects which have been initiated under the general power of competence, that those can continue under that even if you lose it in the meantime. However, on something like the Townscape Heritage Initiative, which is a 5-year programme, that's considerably longer than most projects would actually last. So the safe option, and particularly going forwards, because we now know that we're in a position where technically we don't have it, if there was another initiative or project which came along, I wouldn't particularly want to be arguing, well, we're in year. I'd want to know that we have the requisite number of councillors. And I think from the public's point of view, they would want to know that by way of their own assurance.
Okay, thank you for that. And there is one other item under this heading, and that is at Budget and Policy the other day, we touched on whether or not we should have poll cards. The unanimous view at Budget and Policy was, given the difficulties we had the time before last when we didn't, that we should invest the money in having poll cards. It does cost, it's not huge, but it does cost, but we were severely criticised, I think, by a number of the members of the public that we hadn't done it and people didn't know. Having said that, I fielded a number of criticisms on this occasion that people didn't know about the election. I find that very hard to believe, because I know I had literature through my door from the three candidates, one of whom actually had the temerity to ring the bell, so there you go. I must have forgotten to put the notice out that day, but nevertheless, I think the view of Budget and Policy was that poll cards should be used. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah. Okay, so that's resolved. If we move on then, please, to item 5B, which is the Plans Committee membership. The clerk and I think the chairman of Plans felt it reasonable to ask if there were members in this chamber who would like to join the Plans Committee. Councillor Hutton, you would like to put your name forward? Is there any other member who feels they would like to join the Plans Committee? Are the members prepared to accept Councillor Hutton's request to go forward? Agree? Okay. Councillor Hutton, you've stepped into a pit of... Yes. It's probably worse than a minefield, actually. There's a reasonable chance you'll come out alive by going through a minefield, but anyway, be that as it may, members, we'll move on to 5C, which is licensing matters. The clerk has identified that the current terms of reference for the Plans Committee do not refer to dealing with licensing matters that have been referred to us as a consultee, and we have recently had a couple of licensing applications in Tavistock referred to us by the Borough Council for comments, and it is the clerk's view that it would be sensible to deal with that underneath the Plans Committee, and therefore is seeking your consent, members, to amend the terms of reference for the Plans Committee to include licensing matters. Councillor Sheldon.
Yes, I agree with that. I will resolve that this goes forward as the Plans Committee taking on the role of licensing application and continuing the role, in fact. But I would mention, because at West Devon we have a Development Management and Licensing Committee, and it's members of the Planning Committee who form the subcommittee of the licensing applications, the subcommittee for the licensing applications. So I think it's very logical that the Plans Committee here does complete the licensing applications. I know it's difficult sometimes, and it's a lot of to and fro in, and things come out of the woodwork one week, and then next week there's not a change of mind, but there's a review of what might have taken place. And I know this can only get stronger through experience, particularly on the first applications, and that's the decision. I would also point out that I wanted to bring forward, basically for next year, that the Plans Committee, that we do think about renaming it the Development Committee to bring it into line with development rather than the plans. And that obviously takes in other things as well, and it does the parking, and I don't presume the parking's in standing orders. Town Clerk. I say we also include the parking applications, which wouldn't particularly be covered by the standing orders on this matter, would it? Within the Plans Committee, they consider the parking applications or the parking changes.
Right, I must confess I hadn't clocked that we were picking up parking orders within that one, but if you would wish to include that as more specifically,
yeah,
I don't think there's a problem with doing so. Yes,
licensing applications.
I think Councillor Sheldon is saying that it has been tradition for traffic regulation orders consultations to go via Plans Committee, but he's making the point that that's probably not covered in the terms of reference either.
That's right. So I'm proposing both of those are added to our standing orders.
Thank you, Councillor
That's
Sheldon.
reference.
Councillor Ewins.
I totally agree with Councillor Sheldon, because also we've just had mineral deposits from Devon County consultation put in. So I think to change the committee to maybe development and licensing, to show that the licensing does have a home. So if it's a development committee and licensing or whatever. With regard to licensing, I think it is imperative that the members have training. We've had 2 very difficult applications recently that have been quite contentious, and it's been difficult for all members of the committee, I have to say, apart from myself, who's actually chaired licensing committees before and hearings, that nobody knew any of the policies or anything like that, because we've never really given them out to people or had training. So I think it is absolutely imperative, because we did have a difficult time for reasonings and understandings of the licensing objectives. And so I would like the Town Clerk to note that and to put arrangements in place that there is training given. There used to be, when it first came out, and I have to admit it's many years ago, when the Licensing Act first came out in 2003, 2004, Plymouth City Council used to arrange quite big training sessions, because they have a lot of licensing hearings, and West Devon arranged for its members to go there. So whether there is still something like that where we can buy into another authority's training for our members, I think it would be an excellent idea.
Okay, thank you. We have before us, the members, 3 issues at the moment. From what I could understand just now, the alteration of the terms of reference for the Plans Committee to incorporate licensing matters seem to meet with members' agreement. I'm assuming, but it's dangerous to assume, isn't it? Are members happy that we add traffic regulation orders, so yellow lines and so on, which already does go to plans? Are you happy we add that formally to the terms of reference?
Yeah.
Yes. And the change of name, if that is to happen, could I suggest that we term it development management rather than just development, because I think people might get the wrong idea if they think the committee's there to actually develop something. It is the process of managing development rather than simply planning. Most organisations now do refer to it as development management. So that would be my suggestion, and I would like to support Councillor Ewins, though it breaks my heart to do this, but I would like to support Councillor Ewins. She understands what I'm saying. The licensing has a very, very tight set of parameters. There are 4 licensing objectives, and you can only make a decision to support or object based on at least one of those 4. There is no other place to go. You may not like it, you may not think it's sensible, but the licensing objectives are set out very, very clearly in the Licensing Act, and those are the only grounds upon which you can either approve or reject an application. There are no other ways of doing it whatsoever. But bear in mind that very often when there's a licensing application, there will be, following on behind it, a planning application as well, because it usually involves some changes to the business. So whilst the licensing committee might grant a licence, the planning development management committee may not grant planning consent. But members do need to understand that if they're going to take on licensing. So, views from members on, first of all, the change of name. Has anybody got any real objections to the change to development management? You're all happy with that? And I would like to then have recorded in the minutes that we are asking the clerk, as a matter of some urgency really, to get some training together for members on licensing. Now, whether it's all members, which is probably a good idea, or whether in fact we make sure, I mean, it doesn't matter what we do at the Borough Council, but up there we have a development management committee of 10, and on a licensing panel there are 3 members. But that's a decision this council can make for itself. It can have the whole of the plans committee. It doesn't have to be 3 members, but they do really need training. It is actually quite tricky because it's quite. You get to a situation where, as a citizen, you may well want to resist an application, but if you can't, in all honesty, say that it contravenes one of the 4 licensing objectives, then I'm afraid you can't do that. So people need to understand that that's the regulation. Anything further than members on item 5C? No, everybody's nodding, so it must be okay. So if we move on to item 6 then, the Budget and Policy Committee, as I had the pleasure of chairing that, I will present. I'm simply going to go through, members, on a page-by-page basis. I don't intend reading out all the minute numbers. So is there any question or query that anyone wishes to raise on page 1 of the Budget and Policy Committee? Page 2. Page 3. Councillor Moody was first, then Councillor Sheldon.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask the question, want some clarification of the recommendation. A grant may only be made for a maximum of 3 consecutive years, after which no grant shall be eligible the following year. It's a little bit woolly to me. Just need some clarification. Does it mean that you have to skip a year and then you can have 3 more years, or does it mean after 3 years you don't get any more chances? Could I have an explanation, please?
As I understood the discussion, the rationale behind that was that any one organisation could not apply more than 3 consecutive years for a grant from this council, because we've always tried to avoid becoming a support mechanism for general revenue. It doesn't specify, and I think it was fairly deliberate, it doesn't specify that with a break of 1 year, there is no reason that I'm aware of in this minute or any intention to say that if you come back on year 5, it would be, you can apply for a grant on years 5, 6 and 7. That was my understanding of what was trying to be achieved, if that makes sense. I agree with you, this is perhaps not worded as clearly as it might be, but that was the rationale behind it.
Sorry, Chair, I'm very happy with that explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sheldon.
Yes, I was going to raise the same point. It's pleasing to see this because, as I've said on previous occasions, grants have become into some sort of direct debit from this council, and they do need not just looking at how much money is in the pot. There will be times when we have to say no, or grants have to be cut down. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I don't think that it's actually recorded in the minute, but we did also discuss whether or not, given the call upon our resources currently, we should give consideration to either substantially reducing the amount that's available for grants each year, or indeed stop it entirely. And the view of the Budget and Policy Committee at that time was that that would not be an appropriate thing to do at the moment. But things will get tougher as time goes on, and we will obviously have to review that situation. But the Budget and Policy Committee was quite clear that they didn't wish to take that action at the moment. So anything else on page 3, members? Page 4, not the confidential items, please, but anything else in the open agenda on page 4?
Yeah, I knew I'd read it somewhere when I was going through earlier. It says the notice for item council vacancy is 26th of October, not this week.
Yes, I think it's been updated since then, is it not? Yeah, it's been, although I'm slightly nervous because I am looking at Mrs. Turpin back there and she didn't seem to, wasn't nodding her head, so I think it is supposed to be. Oh, are you?
Yeah, that's the advertising side.
Oh, okay, right.
So I don't know.
No, it's all right.
Originally it was scheduled to be the 26th, but that would have meant that for certain the election could not have been held until the new year, and therefore we've pulled it. I liaised with members of the Budget and Policy Committee, and there were no objections, and therefore we've pulled it back.
Did you?
Members, the rest of the items on pages 4 and 5 will be picked up under the confidential item later on in the meeting, and I will at that point move the whole of the minutes for approval, if that meets with your agreement. Clerk, thank you. You'll be pleased to know I've now lost my place on the agenda, so I know where I'm going now. Items... Yeah, no, sorry, I was just checking there was nothing else under 6, 1 and 2. Item 7... Plans Committee, Councillor Venning, I'm assuming that in the absence of Councillor Ward you will be dealing with these?
Yeah, but I don't know whether I'm really the right person to do it, because I wasn't at one of the meetings and I was only at half of the last meeting. So I don't really know what happened at one of the meetings.
Right, would you like to deal first of all with whichever meeting you were at, the whole of?
Right.
Let's get that out of the way. That'll confuse the members no end because they won't know where they are in the paperwork, but that's all right. Don't worry about it.
I think it was the 22nd of August I wasn't there, so I can't give an answer on that. On 19th September I was there.
But according to these, the 9th of October you were certainly present.
Yeah, but I was there, I declared an interest in the meeting, so I had to leave for part of that as well.
Right.
But the other two, one I wasn't at, which was the 20th of August, 22nd I was there, I think, and the 19th of September I was there, but the other one I wasn't.
Right, so whichever one you were at, would you like to present those minutes to us, please? Sorry?
Councillor Hewins, would you like to report on it?
Councillor Ewings hasn't got all of them with her, so if she borrows somebody's. Right, thank you, Councillor Ewingson. Councillor Ewings, all three.
Councillor Venny, are you happy to go ahead and present the one that you were at, or can you not remember which one you were at?
I think it was the 19th.
Right, in that case, I would... You would rather not. That's fine. So, Councillor Ewing, perhaps if you were at them all, and I suspect you were, would you like to present them, please?
Maybe, because that is the 9th of October, which I've got, Councillor Williamson.
Right, does the clerk have in his possession the minutes of the 22nd of August and the 19th of September? Because I don't have in my possession either.
Oh, wow. Nobody has.
Right, can we... Well, can we please take the minutes of the 9th of October first?
The minutes of the 9th of October of the Plans Committee, item 158 to 163. And, no it's not, it's more than that, 163, to 166. Would just like to say on item 162, that is where the town planning issues were to do with the parking restrictions, etc., which we went through and the comments were made for Grenville Drive. And that, I beg to move, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Whitcomb, thank you. Happy to agree, those members? All in favour? Thank you very much. Do I understand the clerk has disappeared to find the other minutes? Oh, they've been circulated. I think he put an extra copy on, did he not? Hold on, listen.
Right, I can present the minutes of the 22nd of August. No, I can't, because that's the agenda. Right, okay. I have the minutes of the 19th of September. I wouldn't like to be watching this at home. We look like a right.
I would say it's considerably more entertaining than Holby City.
Oh, I don't know about that. No, we've got half an hour.
You're actually talking to a Holby City devotees, as Councillor Ewings knows only too well. Never mind.
Right, okay. The minutes of the Plans Committee of Tuesday the 19th of September. Minute number 137 through to 145. And within that, this is where we discussed our first licensing application, which 2 members of the committee then went to the actual licensing hearing that actually the Mayor chaired in his capacity up the hill at West Devon, where the licence was granted. And that's why he's explained to us tonight that actually that application would have needed planning permission and maybe things could have changed there. But we were told at the meeting on the 9th of October that that application has been withdrawn for that site and that the applicant has purchased and completed on the 9th of October, that day, the purchase of the Ordorf, which was in the local paper, will be changed to the Explorer. With a change of name. So there will be another licensing application coming forward. So having had a drought, we've now had about 1 at every meeting for the last few meetings. So I beg to move those minutes.
Give us a second, please.
No, Julia wasn't.
Was anyone else in the room in the meeting? This is better than any Brian Ricks thing I've ever seen, actually, but this is brilliant tonight. Was anyone else at the meeting? Surely it must have been somebody else at the meeting. I can't... Right.
Who was there? Councillor Ward. Councillor Venning was there.
Right. Councillor Venning's just seconded that proposal to accept. All in favour of that? Right, so we've now dealt with the Plans Committee meetings of the 9th of October and the 19th of September. The 22nd of August still appear to be wandering. They've got them now, have you?
No, it's the agenda.
Right. In which case I'm going to move that we defer consideration of the Plans Committee meeting of 22nd of August until the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Oh, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, sorry, Mr Mayor, there was some slight confusion at that point, and there was a matter that I wished to raise in connection with the recommendations that went to West Devon from the meeting of the 9th of October. I realise that it is in the minutes under 165, but it's not directly, it is linked to one of the applications there. It's the application from Fusion Lifestyle, and it is included in those minutes, and I would just like to address the Council with another point on that, if you would give me permission.
I see no reason why I shouldn't exercise my discretion in view of your seniority and undoubted knowledge, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I mean, whilst I fully agree with the comment, and it's quite a long comment, it's actually in the minutes, which came from the Plans Committee, I think as a council we need to register with the applicant 2 further points with that, and this is the application for Meadowlands Leisure Club. The first is that if any part of the proposed development is on land not currently leased to them, then negotiations are required with the landowner before commencement of any work in that area. This is because there has been some discussion about the area which is indicated on the plans that they put forward, and in my view there is a possibility that not a very big part, but some part of it may well not be in land that's covered by their lease. So I would want them just to be aware of that. And secondly, it's to do with the applicant should be reminded that permission is required for use of land adjacent to the proposed site for the purposes of access by equipment needed during the preparation of the work and during the proposed development. This land, I believe, needs some protection, and we need to make sure that the applicant is actually aware that they will need to make some provision to protect the land adjacent to the development, which is meadows.
Thank you for that, Councillor Smith. Let me be clear on the legal situation. Anyone at all can put in a planning application on any piece of land, whether they own it, lease it, or it's somebody else's. If they put in a planning application on land which they do not have control of by virtue of owning or lease, they are required to submit with that application, and I can't think of the name of the form, but hopefully the clerk can. There is a specific form which has to be completed and sent to the planning authority in order for the planning authority to register that application. I don't know if that's happened in this case because the planning application hasn't surfaced out of the morass at West Devon as yet. It is obviously a civil matter between various parties, and no doubt we can cover that when we come to the Meadowlands discussion in part 2. But in terms of them putting in a planning application, you could put in a planning application on Councillor Johnston's front lawn. That's perfectly legal as long as you send her the appropriate notification. I can't remember what the form's called. No,
yeah, I'm aware of that, yeah, Mr. Mayor, but it's just that I think that there's something here which needs to be it needs to be above the parapet.
The clerk is dying to speak, so I'm going to let him. I'm not sure where it's going to take us. But.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, all it is just to say that point A has, or the first point that you raised, I know has been clarified with the tenant, and point B, I have already issued instructions to our representatives to convey that point to them.
Okay, we can, Councillor Ewing. Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, with thanks to Councillor Sheldon, we have the minutes of the 22nd of August.
I will reverse my previous ruling and we will take the minutes of the Plans Committee of the 22nd of August in that case.
This was a special meeting of the Plans Committee where we received a presentation from Mount Kelly College and their planning consultant. So it is actually more notes, actually, just looking at it. I don't know where the actual... Oh, yes, minutes. We then moved on to the minutes item 93 through to 101. And that is what those minutes were about. I beg to move.
Thank you. Is there a name on there you could suggest? Oh, Councillor Whitcomb, you're happy to second those, eh? Yes. All in favour of those members? Right, thank you. We've now completed item, whatever it was, 7. Just as a point to note for the future, if we are going to have on the agenda more than one set of minutes to consider, could we ensure that those minutes are included with the agenda papers, please? Because this was quite fun, but I wouldn't want to do it twice.
No.
Particularly as we are being broadcast live, it doesn't make us look particularly efficient. If we move on then to item 8, a notice of motion. So, is one of the movers of the motion willing to stand and present the motion and the reasons for it? A lot of slope shoulders going around the table. Stop.
No,
the music stopped when it got to you, Councillor. No, this end was. Man, it was coming.
Well, we could share. No, at the last full council meeting, for some unknown reason, this item skipped through on the minutes of the budget and policy minutes, and I didn't pick it up for whatever reason, whether I flipped 2 pages and missed one, but it wasn't until afterwards that it occurred to me that this is what has happened, is that the decision was that the town council was not going to respond officially as a town council to the one council consultation. It occurred to me that in all the information that I've received is that in the consultation process that different views have different weights. It starts with the MPs who have to agree to they need to be consulted. They take the highest weight. But it's also important for town and parish councils to exhibit their view. I personally feel that this agenda item should have been on the full council agenda and not on a budget and policy agenda, which is a subcommittee. Simply because it's such an important thing that we should have all had the opportunity to have kicked the ball around, discussed all the issues about the One Council consultation, asked questions, received some answers. And it wasn't until after the meeting that it dawned on me that we had agreed, that I decided with a number of other councillors to sign the document to call this back to the council so that we can have a discussion. Tavistock is the largest parish council in West Devon, and I just think it's disappointing that we aren't submitting, or we had agreed to not submit an official view of the One Council, because this is one of the most important issues in West Devon's history, I suppose, going back, well, probably back till 1974 when West Devon was formed. So it's a very important decision to make, and I think that we just need to have had the opportunity to discuss as a group of councillors what all the pros and cons are, and whether we want to put forward, having had that full discussion rather than at a subcommittee, but as a full council, so that we could actually put our thoughts forward to the consultation. I believe that West Devon, we can still submit a response to West Devon, and it will be taken into consideration. So that's where I'm coming from. I would hate to see the largest parish council not to have done anything, and I wouldn't want people, the members of the public, saying, well, why didn't the town council say something about it? I think it's very important that we do.
Thank you, Councillor Moody. Town Clerk, please. We need some guidance. This meeting needs guidance from you in terms of procedure. We have a motion before us which is perfectly appropriate within our standing order number 9B. Do we need to formally vote on the motion itself, that we bring this back, or can we simply move into a debate on the issue?
The motion stands as stated on the agenda and as supported by the 5 members, so you can move straight into a debate, sir. Right,
thank you for that. I just wanted to get that. It was a bit of a rhetorical question, but I did want to get it clear for the members' sake, so procedurally. Councillor Williamson, please.
As a member of Budget and Policy, I agreed with the motion that it should come to Council, but what I would say personally, if there is to be a debate, I would remain silent on whether I think the merger is a good thing or not.
Thank you. Let's just wind back a moment. Then there was a consultation document which has gone out. There were cards sent to every address in the borough where there are registered electors. There were a number of other documents, frequently asked questions, etc. So you should have all seen those. Some of you may or may not have completed the online survey. Some of you may have chosen to get a written survey rather than an online one and completed that. But where we are now, I think, is that members of this council need to put forward some suggestions for a response that can be debated. Is someone prepared to do that? Because at the moment we have nothing to debate because there's no proposal of any sort on the table. We've brought it back to the council for discussion. What is it the council wishes to debate? Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah, as I said, as you mentioned earlier, the facts are now known that only 52% of parishes responded to the consultation. However, we have been told that our view would be listened to or taken into consideration. I went to the Parishes Link Committee recently, where lots of the parishes that did respond were present, and there was some discussion with an officer from the Borough Council. But when you look at the reasons, or the reasons to reject the proposal, which the majority of them there did, I find it difficult to go much beyond two areas, which were that there's a reduction of democratic representation and concerns over the remoteness of access to the combined authority. Those were the two major areas that were discussed on that evening at some length. The first being that by the reduction in the number of councillors and the larger area, there would be dilution of the representation of the people of the area. And secondly, because there had been no indication of exactly where any office or headquarters would be based, that even if it was in the middle of the combined area, there would be a remoteness of access to the combined authority. Although the officer at the meeting said that it would be more than likely that there would be spokes and like a wheel with spokes, so that there would be various people representing the joined up body in various places. But I think that unless we're just going to, as a council, or put those reasons down as our reasons, or whether there is any other reason which is unique to us, which would support rejection, or indeed whether this council wants to support in total the new one council.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. I should record non-pecuniary, I think, personal interest as well as the leader of West Devon Borough Council. It may help, though, if I perhaps put a little bit of flesh around what Councillor Smith has just said. Any proposal to do away with two councils and create one new has to have parliamentary process. It requires legislation to do away with a council, and it requires legislation to create a new council. The controlling department of the government is DCLG, Department of Communities and Local Government, and any proposal would ultimately have to be signed off by the Secretary of State, Saeed Javid. That's an absolute. The discussions that have been going on between the two councils and DCLG have identified that, firstly, if a proposal was put, then DCLG would require that the Boundary Commission be brought in to review the total number of members. That process, unfortunately, takes a considerable period of time, and as a direct result of that, it means that even if a proposal is submitted to DCLG now in November, it would not be possible for enough parliamentary time to be found for the various legislation to be laid before Parliament and dealt with, and for the boundary review to be carried out in time to allow the local government elections to take place in 2019. They would have to be delayed for until 2020. Procedurally, that means the current Borough Council councillors would remain in post for an additional year. Thereafter, after 2020, there would be a 3-year council prior to new elections, which would then bring that new council back into line with the other councils across the country. Why would there have to be a Boundary Commission review? Simply because at the moment you have got a clear disparity between the two councils. In crude terms, the councillors for West Devon have between 12 and 1,400 electors each. Crude numbers. The councillors for South Hams have between 2,200 and 2,400 electors each. Now, that is not something which the Boundary Commission or anyone else would find sustainable, and also DCLG will be expecting to see, as part of the application process, that there will be a reduction in councillors and obviously a saving in that process. So DCLG will be requiring, and the Boundary Commission will be requiring to do that. If you do the arithmetic, at the moment we both have 31 councillors, and that's been since both of us have gone through a boundary review. In terms of West Devon, we had 31, and after our last boundary review we still had 31. In terms of South Hams, they had 40 before their boundary review, and they've now got 31. But if you do the arithmetic, the likelihood is that there would be a reduction of around 20% across the patch, and the likelihood is that the South Hams numbers would drop from 31 to around 28, maybe 29, but 30, and the West Devon ones would drop to around 20. So the current West Devon 31 members goes down to about 20, might be slightly lower than that, and the current 31 South Hams members drop down. So there is an argument which has been put by a number of parish and town councils that the democratic representation is being watered down in West Devon as a result of the process, and undoubtedly for the first few years of the new council there would clearly be the two bits sort of still there, and one would outweigh the other. One would hope that as the new council formed up, it would be similar to Devon County at the end of the day, with members representing the whole county rather than looking to replicate what they had before. On the positive side of representation, at the moment there are 2 members of Parliament that cover West Devon Borough Council, and there are 2 members of Parliament that cover South Hams District Council. In the new council, if there were to be one, there would be 4 members of Parliament representing the whole of the council. In terms of other representation, at the moment West Devon Borough Council has 2 members on the Dartmoor National Park Authority. South Hams District Council has 1. It is likely that, and this is DEFRA this time, not DCLG, DEFRA would not necessarily agree to the continuation of there being 3 representatives. They would probably want that to go down to 2. That's not something that anyone's very clear on at the moment. There have been some discussions with DEFRA, but there's no clear answer. So there are a number of issues, such as representation on other bodies. I won't bore you by going through the list of all the other bodies that the 2 councils have got representation on at the moment. Certainly on the devolution debate that's going on, each council sits on it and has a vote. On Devon Districts Forum, each council sits on it and has a vote, and so on. AONBs and various other things. So I won't go into the detail, but that's what is sitting underneath this concern that's come through from parish and town councils about the shift in the democratic representation. I'm not expressing any sort of an opinion. It's just simply trying to illustrate why there has been that particular concern. In terms of the location of the new council, there has been criticism from the public and from parish and town councils that the proposal does not indicate where the new council would be based. No work has been done on that at all. There is logic would predict that at some point in the future, neither Totnes nor Tavistock were perhaps the best place to have the main centre of activity. That doesn't mean that there wouldn't be offices remaining in some of the locations, so that people would still be able to, by appointment, go and see a councillor or a council officer in certain locations, as we've done with Oakhampton, for instance, where there's an office there. Although that one's currently manned all the time, it wouldn't necessarily be in the new sort of setup. So those are sort of the issues, and I think those are the issues which this council, if it wants to form a view, needs to take some of those things. I don't want to go through the whole of the frequently asked questions and the whole of the document, but I'm just trying, for your benefit, hopefully, to indicate the sort of concerns that have arisen with other councils. I'm quite happy to try and answer any other questions, and I've got Councillors Sheldon and Moody who knows as much as I do, and probably a lot more, if people have got other questions. Councillor Ewings.
One of the concerns that sort of arises and that I've heard about is that West Devon part of this new council could actually always be outvoted by the South Hams element because of the difference in numbers of councillors. Bearing in mind that South Hams is predominantly, very strongly predominantly, one party, that actually they could still almost control West Devon. And that is a fear that when you talk amongst the community, that we wouldn't have democratic representation because you could always be outvoted. So you could say to us as councillors, you know, in this room, that we've got representation on West Devon here, that actually they could work really hard for the town of Tavistock and then get outvoted when they go to another meeting, because Tavistock, Oakhampton, Drew Stainton that I always quote, you know, and Hatherley, High Hampton, etc. All those areas are just so remote. And, you know, what real representation? They could have a councillor who could work so hard, but actually get absolutely nowhere when it gets back to Totnes in the first instance. And I think that is a concern that people have. Yes, as I put on my survey form, the precept will be different, whether South Hams, because at the moment I think it's about £63, the difference on a Band D property, that South Hams pay less than we do in West Devon. So, you know, does ours come down or does theirs go up? You know, and it's not fair to anybody. It will be probably both to even it out.
No, it definitely won't. There absolutely will not. It will have to be that South Hams will have to go up over a period of time to equalise. It is not. You can't bring West Devon's down simply because one of the driving force behind this is the gap in the budget. You cannot bring West Devon. DCLG won't agree to that, but neither would the council. It would be suicide. Literally.
So, you know, there's all of those sort of things to take into account. My biggest fear is representation for Tavistock. And had we really thought this through, that we could just be dismissed. And, you know, as I say, you've got 7 councillors at the moment that represent the town. That will possibly go down to 3. Would I be correct in thinking?
I wouldn't like to say, but I mean, if one assumes that they go back to 2000, say 400, you can divide 12,000 or a bit less, isn't it, Tavistock population by 2,400 and see what you get as an answer. But that isn't necessarily how it would work. No. I mean, the Boundary Commission do strange and wonderful things. There appears to be no logic, with due respect to the Boundary Commission, if you happen to be listening to me, but there appears to be no logic. Last time round we said we didn't like 2-member wards, and at the end of the process we still ended up with 31 councillors, but we had more multi-member wards than we had before. Yeah. But it's impossible
part of that process. And I just have serious concerns about the expectations for Tavistock to take on more. You know, some of the roles that West Devon currently do, that they would be brought down to us, whether the finance is not great for West Devon and that they do pass these jobs down, but actually we still have no say and no strong vote if it's not liked when it's one council, because of that power that the South Hams side have over West Devon. And that is a genuine fear for people, that we will be dismissed.
Councillor Sheldon.
Yes, if there's any vote, I'll be abstaining by reason of a personal interest. It was interesting to note that just some of the statistics, that the 64% of the town and parishes that responded to the consultation, this is across South Hams and West Devon, that was 74% responded in South Hams and 52% in West Devon. Of all town and parish councils that responded, 13 supported, 49 are against, and 7 were unable to reach a decision. Now, the main points, and Councillor Smith has given for some of the reasons that the proposal wasn't supported, that there would be a reduction in democratic representation across the larger area, that more information is required on the proposal, such as where the HQ would be, and how the savings would be generated and what costs would be, concerns over remoteness of access to services, acknowledgement of the difficult financial position of the councils. I don't quite know what that means, but loss, I think that's probably understanding what the financial position of the councils actually is before making a decision. Loss of identity for the areas, that options should be explored with other neighbouring authorities, and I think that was another thing. Now, of the 19% that didn't, the 13 that support. That's 13 that supported, so it comes out as 90% of the town and parish councils supported the proposal. Some of the key themes, there were no realistic alternatives. Ensuring that services remain accessible across the whole area would be important. Now, they're obviously arguing among themselves on that one. Wouldn't want to see service cuts, and these are the people who support it. That fair and proportional representation should be maintained. Really, they're arguing against themselves if you look at the fact that that was the point, that they wanted to not support it because they would lose representation. And they're saying that that the representation should be maintained, but obviously there's no guarantee of anything. Now, as I say, I'm abstaining on this, but I would say that the only simple thing on this, we've heard the twos and the four. The councillors were given the decision from the Budget and Policy Committee, which was agreed at council at the time, was for councillors to give their own view. So I'm expecting that councillors have actually looked into this after that meeting, or they do know something about it through the newspapers, through the website, through a card coming through the door. They're giving it some thought. And I would propose that we have a simple, it would have to be a simple vote, because you can't say we support it and then everybody votes against it, or we support it and everybody's in favour. That sort of vote is not going to work. I think the councillors present, I'll be abstaining. I know that the Mayor, Mr Mayor will be abstaining, Councillor Moody will be abstaining. So I think it's up to the rest of the councillors to either vote to support or not to support. And I leave that to the town clerk to take note of how this is going to be run, because it's not going to work. Because if we have a motion that's not carried either way, it's not going to quite work. So I think we just need to know who's going to support it and who's not going to support it based on what we already know up to date.
We do, Councillor Sherman, thank you for that. We do need a proposition which is seconded. It's largely, not from you, but it's largely irrelevant what the proposition is. But, you know, it can't be a halfway thing. Either the Town Council is minded to support, or the Town Council is not minded to support, which is the vote that's been taken in the other parishes.
So I will propose then...
Well, you can do, but I thought you wanted to stay out of it.
Yeah, I know. I did want to say... Yeah, I did want to stay out of it. So whoever wants to propose it, whichever way, and then the rest vote for it, against it. Yeah, great. I was trying to be very fair then.
Sorry, Councillor Palfrey. Oh, Councillor Hutton first. Yes.
I propose we object to it.
Thank you. Would you care to give...
I would support that as well. So.
Thank you. Councillor Hutton, we object. Would you care to give any reasons, please? I think it carries more weight if it's got reasons.
The main reason that concerns me is the democracy. I think it's a great danger that we will become unrepresentative.
Thank you. Councillor Palfrey, are you happy as the seconder with that? Do you wish to add anything to it?
I think I'd like to add that I would have concern over any financial savings that might come. I think they would not necessarily come to fruition either.
Thank you. Councillor Hutton, as you propose the motion, are you happy to accept the addition from Councillor Palfrey?
Yes.
Thank you. Members, we have a motion on the table now. You may debate it if you so wish, or we can move straight to a vote. It's entirely up in your hands, really.
Move to the vote, Mr Mayor.
Are you all happy with that, members? Right, so the proposal is that this council objects to the proposal of West Devon Borough Council to form one council with South Hams. It does so on the basis of the potential reduction in democratic representation and concern about the... Sorry, Councillor Palfrey, we're concerned about the savings. Is that... Am I getting the wording right or not? Uncertainty about the achievement of the savings and the cost presumably of when you get through it. Right. So if you're all clear on that, members, we're voting on those, and three of us will be definitely abstaining. Others of you may wish to do so as well. Those in favour of that motion, then please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Those against and abstentions.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Right, thank you for that, members. If we move on then...
Mr
Sorry?
Mr. Mayor, can I just there was some confusion, I think, at the parish meeting, but if either West Devon or South Hams reject the proposal, does that fall?
Yes. It's either all in or no one in. Firstly, because we are joined at the hip anyway, because we've had shared services now for a significant proportion of time. And secondly, because DCLG would not entertain a proposal which didn't have the support of both councils. There is also, just for the benefit of the record, because it has been said in a number of fora that it's a done deal and the consultation is a waste of time, because whatever it says, the councils are going to ignore it, and officers and members have been accused of making that statement. That is entirely untrue. What anyone who has been asked the question has said, with due honesty, is that from DCLG's point of view, the application will not be progressed unless it has the support of all of the MPs in the area. The application must have come forward after there has been a public consultation, and the councils must take into account the public consultation. However, the public consultation of its own, unlike the MPs, the public consultation on its own is not sufficient necessarily to stop the thing going through. And that's been translated into the consultation as a waste of time because it's just going to be ignored. It's completely untrue. And it's quite irritating when you hear that statement made, because it is, the consultation is there. What weight is given to the consultation is a matter for the councillors at the end of the day. Given that it's slightly over 3% of the electorate, members will have to make their own decisions about what weight they apply to the 50 or 60% of the 3% who don't like it. That's a matter for them, but the consultation will be taken into consideration, and it will be taken into consideration by DCLG. But DCLG are very clear that certainly at the current time, unless all 4 MPs are prepared to openly support, then it will not go forward. And there is a very good example. The West Somerset Taunton Dean one has been floating around now for well over a year. Their local MP, Ian Littlegranger, is not supportive of it, and for that reason it hasn't been signed off by the Secretary of State as yet. And without getting into politics, if you stop and think what the situation is in terms of numbers at the moment within the government, you may understand why the government, or DCLG or any other government department for that matter, may not be anxious to go ahead with something which is contrary to the wishes of an MP. We haven't had at West Devon yet, or at South Hams, we haven't had formal confirmation or rejection from any of the 4 MPs. There have been discussions going on, but we've not had anything formally from them, which one wouldn't expect, really, because the consultation has only just finished and the results have only just been published. But at some point before an application goes in, the Borough Council and District Council will need the support of all 4 MPs. Hope that's clear. Right, I'm bored with listening to me, so I know you're bored. So if we move on quickly, then please, to service reports. The General Manager's report, and he's not here, so we can have a good old dig at this one tonight. Sorry? Is there not? Surely.
I congratulate the General Manager on his superb report.
I would wish to raise from the chair. I have concerns, and this is not perhaps the right place to debate it, but I'm still concerned that we are moving ahead with the Rundle Room, which is going to cost us £40,000 at a time when we don't have huge chunks of money. And I have heard other members express concerns as well. I don't know if at some point the members want to do that, but I understand that the tender finding process is due to commence this week. I don't really know where the point it's reached, but I did notice in the work superintendent report that tenders are going out this week, and that seems to contradict what's in the General Manager's report.
If I may, Mr Mayor, my recollection of the situation is that we have a budget allocation of £20,000. There is an expectation that the works would come in at around about £40,000, and when this was considered previously by the Budget and Policy Committee, it requested that this was one of the projects which it review when it comes back before them in the event that it comes in at over budget, which we're clearly expecting it will do. So there will be an opportunity at that stage for members to express a view on how they wish to proceed, and the tender process is without prejudice to that view.
Thank you. I think we need to be very careful as an organisation, because the industry does not like spending time and money putting tenders together if the client doesn't really intend to accept them. I think we're skating on a little bit thin ice, to be honest. If we're using the tender process, if we genuinely think that from a QS point of view that the budget is going to be light to the tune of 100%, so I think you're talking about doubling it from 20 to 40. I have some concerns if we're going to the marketplace, unless we're at least partially willing to increase the budget by 100%. Just bear in mind that for these firms to put together a tender, it's extremely time consuming and very expensive. So if we're using it as an exercise to test, I have quite serious concerns.
I mean, I think, Mr Mayor, the situation was that at the time members felt that they would have the opportunity then to look at the worked up design and to come to a view as to whether or not that represented value for money in terms of what they wished to spend. Certainly it was something which had, I think, a reasonably lengthy discussion at the time coming out of the capital report, where it was mooted that we spend less than the budgeted amount, and that was certainly not something which received general support.
Okay, I've made my comments. The other thing on the General Manager's report, it says all necessary arrangements implemented for Goose Fair. I did ask the clerk before the meeting started when we could expect a report back on this year's Goose Fair. Certainly the initial information that I've had would suggest that the take on the park and ride is very substantially down on previous years, and the clerk may wish to comment on when we're going to get a report, and also on the parking.
You'll receive two things, Mr Mayor. The first, in relation to a report on Park and Ride, normally comes through around about December time. That's when all the invoices have been paid and we've got visibility on the costs. I think what I can say, certainly in terms of the actual income generated from Park and Ride, and obviously there are many people who visit who don't use the Park and Ride facilities, but for those who do, we are on the lowest figure of income that we've received in the last 6 years, so it was significantly down on that side of things. But what you will also get is you'll get a more general update through probably the General Manager's report after we've had the wash-up meeting following Goose Fair, which will pick up on any matters which arise out of that and areas for improvement or development next year.
Thank you. I also understand that it became necessary at one point during the day to close the Hartford Bridge Park and Ride, and I think it would be useful for us to have a report on that and whether we need to be considering alternatives or additions or whatever. Sorry, Councillor Williamson?
Yeah, I don't think the Hartford Bridge one closed. I think it was the... Was it? Oh, right. Well, I'm wrong.
Well, Mr Mayor, I mean, obviously my friends in Alliance were running this. Income undoubtedly was down. They were very quiet. There were stages, at one stage, they were pulling people into the car park with a tractor, as well as pulling them out. So there was a major problem with actually the mud.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Hartford Bridge one, as I understand it, the difficulty there is the access to it is uphill. Those people who are a little more used to driving on mud and ice were able to access it, as were four-wheel drives. Those people who seem to think the appropriate approach is to shove it in bottom gear and slam your foot hard on an accelerator weren't managing to get in, but I think there was no difficulties, I understand, at getting out of Hartford Bridge once they were in, because they were facing downhill, and the parking was arranged instead of double road as it often is, it was arranged as single rows, so as far as I'm aware everyone got out all right, but there was a period when people weren't able to get in. But I think we ought to review that as part of the report.
That will form part of the General Manager's report after the wash-up meeting when we've had feedback from the parties, sir. Yes.
Councillor Williamson, did you want to come in?
I just would add that although we're not contracted in any way, the park that owns the field to support it beyond the use of the field access permission and whatnot, we did actually provide some extra ground boards, but they were insufficient. So, I mean, the solution is probably more kind of roadways if it's raining, and of course, one never knows.
Okay, so that was my... Anyone else got any other issues on the General Manager's report? No, if we move on then to the Work Superintendent's report. I don't have any specific issues to raise. Does anyone else have any specific issues on that? If not, could I just make members aware, if you're not already aware, that Ken actually retires on this Friday, the 20th. He's been with us, I think, between 12 and 13 years. I understand that there certainly has been a collection and there is a card circulating amongst the staff. If any member wishes to become involved in that or contribute to it, then I'm looking in Leslie's direction to know where they should direct their attention in the next couple of days.
Drop it out to us and we'll pass it on to welfare, who's acting.
It's up to you, entirely up to you, members, but I know some of you probably never met Ken and don't know who he is, and others of you have obviously had contact with him over quite a long period of time. He's been with us 12 or 13 years, but his last day of service is the 20th. He has been very explicit in saying that he does not want a presentation and a formal goodbye. I think the lads in the Works Department might have got something evil lined up for him in a local hostelry. But beyond that, he has very clearly said that he does not wish to have a formal presentation or a formal goodbye. And the council has respected its wishes, or the council officers have, and I'm sure that you members will do the same as well. Councillor Palfrey.
Thank you, Mr. Merrick. Can we put something in the minutes to show our appreciation for the work that the manager has done over the years, and wish him well in his retirement?
I think that's... Members, are you very happy with that? I'm happy with it, yeah? Fine, thank you. That will be done then. So if we move on then to the Town Hall Manager's report. I would only comment that under item 3, the Tavistock's town flag, that was instigated by Councillor Mrs Johnson, which I think is a really good idea. We do have a town flag. Why don't we show it off at times when we're having civic events? And thank you to Mrs Johnson for bringing that forward. I think that's good. Any other comments on the Town Hall Manager's report? No? Thought it was too good to be true.
I think on wedding awards that we should just congratulate the staff of the Town Hall for getting as far as they have.
Yeah.
And to actually hope that they win or placed or whatever.
That's 3 votes away from reaching the final. So.
Get ringing them up.
Anything else on Town Hall Manager's report? No? Panny Market report then. Anything on that, please? Some fascinating stuff goes on there, isn't it? Crafty H and Biles and Bertie's Brews and...
Like that, I did think the new traders, Maggie Green is a new trader. She's been trading for about 40 years in there.
Councillor Whitcomb hit me up on that one. She did actually leave for a period of time and now she's back. So.
I know, but it's about 40 years, isn't it? Maggie's been in there.
Okay. Does anyone wish to pursue anything about the Garden Festival item? Or are you happy with what's there?
Very good news.
Okay. So nothing further on that report. So if we then move on to item 10, finance and other matters. To receive information, to receive for information of the following. Item A is THI Project Management Board.
Very interesting minutes.
The seconds were even better. Item B, sorry, Councillor Johnson, this is on item A, is it? please go ahead.
Looking at the Townscape Heritage Project Management Board, there's reference on at least one occasion, if not more, about One Church Lane. I think the building itself is looking in splendid condition. It's very disappointing that there seems to be a lot of builder's rubble and some big metal fences, that's the word, thank you, and a lot of rubbish in the front of that, and having spent so much public money and on that building, I think it's a shame that it's not finished properly and that's all cleared up. I don't know if the Town Council can make any comments or ask for that to happen.
Sorry, as a council we have asked for that to happen, but of course it hasn't yet.
I also understand there are some concerns from the owner of One Church Lane about trees that are overhanging from the churchyard onto the property, and that seems to have been a festering sore for some considerable time as well. I don't know whether that is something that's going to be addressed, because I think this council is responsible for the trees, are we not?
Yes, we are.
Not the diocese, I think it's the council, isn't it?
We have got some correspondence. I must confess I'm not up to date in terms of where it is at the moment. I'll review it, sir.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Coming back, having walked One Church Lane a couple of times today, it seems to be where all the leaves are collecting, all the rubbish is collecting right outside the front door of One Church Lane. It is looking pretty sad there, actually. I just think it needs to be completely cleared up, and it would be helpful if whoever's responsible for sweeping One Church Lane, which I probably guess is a contractor of the Borough Council, actually put a brush down there and cleared the leaves up and the rubbish.
I can't answer who's responsible for clearing the leaves. I've no idea. But I can find out, but I don't know. Could I just... Sorry. Yeah.
It's West Devon for Church Lane, but actually the churchyard itself is what Tavistock Town Council do, and there's always a big leaf day when they go in and collect masses and masses of leaves. But it is there. But I do agree with Councillor Mrs Johnson, and I did speak with Clark earlier about this and understand that enforcement may be taken as well to get this issue sorted out. So let's just hope it happens.
Thank you. Could I also ask whoever prepared this report to recognise that there are two different ways of spelling complementary and they have different meanings. So under 2C, I don't think that particular spelling is appropriate. I think it should be compli rather than complimentary. It's a small point, but...
It's relevant.
10B, Tavistock Heritage Advisory Forum.
Mr Mayor.
Everybody's coming alive now. Strange. Yep.
Refer in these minutes before us tonight. I refer you to minute 7, the final sentence, which says the forum will only function if there is continued interest from the whole heritage community. I would remind members that they're all aware, I hope, that this forum is included in the Guildhall bid as the opportunity for the wider heritage community to influence the direction of Tavistock Heritage Trust. It's, first of all, disappointing that so few members actually attended this meeting, when you look at the attendance and the apologies, etc. If there is a possibility, the forum not functioning, we as partners in the scheme are pivotal in what would replace that forum and the proposed role and the operation of any replacement organisation. It's just a point which I raise. There's one particular member of that this group who is already saying that there's no point in having the advisory forum. But it is in the bid document, the bid to HLF, it is in the document that that forum is in place and it's a straight line from the THT to that forum in the organogram.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments on that particular item? Move on to item C then, which is the report of the Assistant to the Town Clerk. If anyone's interested in the town clerk's whereabouts, she was last heard of somewhere around the Cleveland area, stuck in an enormous traffic jam, heading up to Leicester with the general manager and also the clerk from Callington Town Council. You may wonder what they're all doing in the...
Up there?
You may wonder what they're all doing up there. I mean, I think they may have moved on a little bit now, but I gather there was a fairly serious accident just north of Cleveland, on the M5, which was causing some problems. And I think your general manager has managed to consume the town clerk of Callington's entire stock of Maltesers during the journey.
Are we allowed to ask what they're doing?
Well, we'll probably have to execute you thereafter, but the town clerk might be prepared to share with you.
I dread to think. It's actually the annual conference of the Society of Local Council Clerks, so it's a training and development opportunity.
So, anything on the assistant to the town clerk's report that anyone wishes to pick up? No? Fine, we will move on. Tavistock Chamber of Commerce, minutes of the meetings, any comments? Sorry? Any other comments? No? Item E then, Tavistock bid, any comments? Item F, anyone wish to enlighten us to anything that's gone on outside bodies? Councillor Johnson, then Councillor Smith, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Kingdom House, I represent the Town Council on the Kingdom House Board. This coming Saturday, the 21st of October, there's an open day. There will be free activities and performances going on in the various rooms in the Kingdom House. In the morning, there's going to be a printing workshop. Many of you will, well, hopefully some of you will remember when it actually was a print works there.
What?
Was the,
That was 1815, wasn't it?
I went on a school trip, Mr Mayor, in the 1960s, and it was still a printing works
Proves my
then.
point, sorry.
Some of us have lived here a long time. And then in the afternoon there's going to be a clay workshop. Everything is free, and the trustees will be providing tea and cakes for the day. It's from 10 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Destination Oakhampton. I had email correspondence with Dr Michael Ireland this morning. He said yesterday a delegation from Oak Rail, which is another group in Oakhampton, looking to bring back the railway, regular daily railway service to Oakhampton. They met councillors at Devon County Council at County Hall to discuss the project for the Parkway station and the town. So things are moving on, perhaps not as quickly as some of us would hope, but hopefully it won't be that many more years before there's a regular daily service train back to Oakhampton from Exeter, and then hopefully at some stage we'll get the railway back here in Tavistock. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Smith.
I wish to report back to members on the Tavistock Community Sensory Garden. As your representative on that organisation, I'd like to bring members up to date with where we are with the provision of the garden. This is a project which the Council supported from the outset. In principle, the work to form the garden is complete. The current committee is in negotiations with regard to an electricity supply to the site, and there is also support for a Friends of the Garden scheme. Going forward, it is proposed that the organisation will become a charitable incorporated organisation. It is proposed that there should be a board of trustees with a maximum of 12 members, and there is going to be a formal opening of the garden, which the chairman of the current group is in the process of organising.
Thank you. Any other member, anything they want to bring back from anywhere they've been? And I don't mean Lanzarote. No. So if we move on then to item 11, which is to receive such communications as blah blah blah. I would like to read out to you an email which has been sent by Jackie Orange to a number of people. This is the Horticultural Society results, and it reads: great news, here are the results from this year's judging. Canal beds advancing, Rose Walk advancing, Cottage Garden thriving, Tavi thriving, Tavistock Museum, thriving. Sensory garden, outstanding. Heritage veg plot, brackets old folks restroom, thriving. Tavistock bid won gold for the 3rd year running. Pretty good. I will email the feedback sheets to you this week and make arrangement for a formal presentation as soon as I receive the certificates. Please pass this message on to all those involved who I may not have email details for. Bit of good news, I think, isn't it? Sounds pretty, exciting. Really pleased that we've won gold again, the 3rd year running. I think that's very impressive. So that's item 11. Item 12, I have one item I want to bring forward. I was disappointed and slightly irritable to read in the paper that the MAN engine's coming back for a day in Tavistock next year. I'm not disappointed that the MAN engine's coming back, but I'm just disappointed that I found out via the local newspaper. I don't know who or where or when the decision was made to bring it back on a particular day, but what I think we do need to do is, the last time round, as I recall, there was a feeling that a number of opportunities has been missed by both the town and this council to take advantage of it. Now, sadly, it is happening once again on a working day during the week. I have a feeling it's a Tuesday or something like that. Sorry? I can't remember. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it...
Holidays, yeah.
Sorry?
School holidays.
Right. So, obviously, something funny is going on. I mean, I don't have any suggestions to offer at this stage. I haven't really thought about it, but I would certainly like someone to help me understand how that it just happened without the town council knowing it was coming back.
It was on the news.
Oh, I know it was on the news, and I know it was in the newspaper, but I would have thought maybe the town council might have had some advance warning. But more importantly, in a way, I think we need to think about how we move forward and take advantage of it this time to try and portray the town, in a positive way. It brought us a lot of publicity last time, but this coming to the end of really the closure of the pannier market, towards the end of that process, we could really build on something.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just wondered whether they would have had to have gone to West Devon Borough Council to use Bedford Car Park.
They did.
Well, if they did, it certainly didn't reach this West Devon Borough Councillor.
Could I explain?
Yes, certainly.
I was approached by Will Coleman to make some inquiries at West Devon about the possibility of using the Bedford car park on the date of the 3rd of April. I've made some inquiries and basically signposted him had an agreement in principle which was forwarded on to Will Coleman, and I had presumed, and yet again we shouldn't presume or assume, that the Town Council had been informed. It wasn't my omission for not telling the Town Council. I personally, and I was quoted in the paper saying that I was all in favour of the MAN engine coming back to Tavistock, because I think it's a brilliant concept. It will introduce people into town, help businesses, and I totally support the chair's thought that Tavistock Town Council should get involved and use that opportunity to promote Tavistock. What I've been trying to do as the Mayor of West Devon is to promote West Devon. And I keep reminding Will Coleman that it's not the Cornish mining heritage, it is the Cornish mining and West Devon mining heritage. And that Tavistock and West Devon is the gateway to the Cornish mining heritage. So that's where I came in, facilitated some talks with the relevant people at West Devon. But other than that, I've had no further involvement in any organisation. So I think the Town Council probably would preferably contact Golden Tree and see how we can work together with them. Because I think they're really looking forward to coming back to Tavistock again.
Councillor Johnson was next.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I went on the website when I realised it was happening to look at how much the tickets were going to be, and although they're advertised at £5, not all tickets will be £5. What I found to be very disappointing was it had Bedford Square, Tavistock, Cornwall on the website. So I found that extremely disappointing. Hopefully they will know that Tavistock is in West Devon.
Councillor Sheldon, please.
Yeah, I was going to say, you know, this isn't going to be an open event. The way I've read this, you know, when you saw it in the town in Bedford Square and everybody coming together, etc., that this will be, there'll be private shows where people have to pay to go into Bedford car park, and the prices may start at £5. I think that's the minimum price, with a £1 booking fee. Then for the evening show, they go up to £12 and £1.20 booking fee. So that's £13.20 to go and see the Man Engine. I'm only pointing this out because if there is going to be a little bit of effort to get people in the town, really it is going to be a private show in Bedford car park. And I would imagine, because it's going to other places as well, that they'll have a company to do fencing, admission, and it'll be very regulated. And I don't think that people may not come even for the £6 it'll cost to go and see the Man Engine. I don't think it'll have the same sort of interest that could have been if it was in the main Bedford Square. So that's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to pull.
They're doing the pyrotechnics as well.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're doing 2 shows. It's a show, more 3 shows. Yeah, well, it's a show more than, it's a bit like having the wrestling in the town hall and saying, well, that's good, and we're all dressed up as wrestlers and something. But no, yeah.
To me, yes, there is a charge. I'm not here to defend the charges or whatever. But the point is that we currently have that same sort of situation with the steam fair, where there's an entrance fee. It's not as large, but the entrance fee, but it's an enclosed exhibition. So all I'm saying is that it's not much different from that, and that still draws people into Tavistock. But as I say, I'm not here to defend the business model, but obviously there is a cost for moving the Man Engine around and all the other bits and pieces that go along with the promotion of that. But I still think that, even my personal view is that it still will attract a footfall into Tavistock, which I think we need to take advantage of.
I would agree, but I would think, I don't know, because certainly it's not come before the Borough Council to my knowledge. I don't think it's gone to any committee of the Borough Council to my knowledge, but there will be a significant impact upon the traders in this town if the car park is closed during the working week. The Steam Fair occurs on a Sunday, which doesn't have quite such a dramatic impact. Goose Fair does have a dramatic impact, albeit it's on for an entire week rather than a single day. But, you know, I would wonder what consideration, if any, is being given to the impact on the traders in the town if their employees can't park and neither can the shoppers. If it's taking up the whole of Bedford car park, but as I know nothing about it other than the little bit I saw in the papers. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. I feel there needs to be some joined-up thinking with everybody in this town. If it is during the school holidays, perhaps car parking could happen at the 2 schools in the town. You know, we just need to kind of see how it can work and make sure it is the best thing that can happen, and that people aren't not coming to town to shop because there's no car park for that day. We just need to kind of really some joined-up thinking with everybody involved.
Would it be the wish of this council that we ask the clerk to write to West Devon in the first instance to find out what, if any, decision's been made? I mean, presumably a decision has been made. I don't know how, because it's certainly not come through any committee or the council. And I don't know that anyone else has got the authority to do that, frankly, but to find out what is intended, because I do have concerns. I mean, it may be that it will bring additional trade, but it could equally be that it won't if the car park's not available. Councillor Ewings.
Okay, sorry. From what I know of this and what Councillor Moody's already shared, the event is going to be run on a much more business-like event than previously, because a lot of money, a six-figure sum of money, was lost by an individual through doing the tour of the man engine. As the man engine started here, things were controllable. But once it got down, and there was 22,000 people in places like Truro and Penzance, the costs went up because of policing and everything else for public safety. This time I think they're going for enclosed areas to protect it, but also to be able to draw people into it. Like you, I don't know that it's been officially granted permission to park at Bedford car park for the day. I don't know that. The one thing that is different this time is that we are the last stop. So whereas last time we were the first and the numbers grew, this time we're going to be the last stop. So we may get 22,000. No. We are the last stop of where he started the journey, because he's trying to do his leaving Cornwall and West Devon. So where he started is where he finishes before he goes on his UK-wide tour, as the pop group would say. So it's that side. There's been no discussion yet, to my knowledge, with any groups in this town about it. I don't know that the Chamber know, the BID know. I don't think anybody knows. I think they just launched, and we will find out, inquire as to what is going on.
Town Clerk, and then I think we need to finish this item really, because we're not going to sort anything out tonight. We just need to get some information.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just had a word with the Market Reeve. I understand that not at the last meeting of the Chamber of Commerce, but 2 meetings ago, John Taylor did indicate that that the man engine was coming back, and that he gave an indication as to when the date was going to be. From the Town Council's point of view, I think it was last week, we received a request for information as to whether or not there were any other events going on the day which has been allocated for this, but we didn't receive any, as far as I'm aware, any details of what the event was actually going to involve in terms of the nature of what's been outlined here. So that's as far as we're aware of the history of it.
Right. I did suggest just now, it didn't seem to be particularly well received, but would members like the clerk to write certainly to West Devon to establish whether or not there is an issue with the car park? I do think potentially it could be very good for our traders, but if it's going to be taken advantage of, then we would need to approach the schools, for instance, for consent to use their parking area if it's during half term, because that certainly Tavistock College grounds can make quite a significant difference, and it's not that far to walk if you're able-bodied. It's a fair trek if you're not, but happy with that, Councillor Puffy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we also should be mindful as a council of any costs which might come our way in respect of this event as well. I'm thinking along the lines of stewarding and maybe extra transport putting on it, etc. So I think this is something we, as a council, to consider as well, and perhaps raise that question with West Devon to see if they can give us any pointer, if you will, as what costs possibly might come our way.
Okay. I don't think there's any point in pursuing this any further tonight, but I think the clerk needs to hopefully bring back some information to us relatively quickly. You happy with that? Robert, I'm going to have to say it's been extremely nice having you with us this evening, but we're about to move into part 2, where I'm afraid members of the public have to depart. Staff members don't have to, I don't think, do they? Not necessarily, but sorry to see you depart. Thank you for